I was reviewing memorials late into the night when the prince consort, Adrien, brought me a bowl of ginseng soup. Your Majesty must preserve your health. This vast empire is a heavy burden for you to bear alone. He glanced at the palace maid below, then said to me with some hesitation, Livia is my cousin. Why not take her into my chambers? If she bears a son, he can inherit the throne one day. The brush in my hand paused. Livia spoke up with a smug smile. I don't care if you are the empress. Once you drink this severance brew, you'll be on your knees. If I were you, I'd listen to Adrien. Otherwise, there is no antidote, and your guts will rot from the inside out. You are a hen that can't even lay an egg. You should give the throne to Adrien. I will be the queen, and I will be virtuous and benevolent. Adrien did not stop her. His eyes flickered as he sighed. Saraphina, now that you are a wife, you should focus on your husband and raising children. To be so public in your duties, it truly is improper. A wife? Improper? I chuckled. Was it proper for us to ascend the dragon throne by stepping over the blood of my own father and brothers, unable to bear children? What does that have to do with anything? There are a dozen castrated consorts in the purification chamber. Their eyes bleed with hope as they wait for my pardon every single day. Seeing my silence, Livia grew bolder. Step by step, she ascended the dais to the dragon throne. Adrien! She turned her gaze electric. Look at this seat! How magnificent! This is where a man of your talents belongs. Are you truly content to be cooped up in the harem? Without even a descendant of your own blood? What prince consort? You married her. So you are the master here. She paused, her eyes piercing into me. Some people occupy the throne but produce nothing, a hollow title of empress. Yet she can't even lay an egg, wasting this great empire and hindering Adrien's future. Adrien's lips tightened, his Adam's apple bobbing. He took 2 steps forward, his voice deepening. Saraphina, my patience is truly limited. The House of Shen is a prestigious clan, renowned for a century. For me, a proud man to marry into your palace was the ultimate humiliation. And now, you won't even give me the hope of continuing my family line. Do you want my house to end with me? He took a deep breath, his eyes filled with conflict. Don't be so stubborn. You have 1 stick of incense's time. Won't you grant me and Livia this? I don't want your throne. I only want Livia. And that soup, you drank it. You should know how potent it is. It is truly lethal. My brush never stopped moving, the vermilion ink slashing sharp red lines across the memorial. The incense in the burner beside me burned slowly, a gut-wrenching poison. From the moment I decided to sit on this throne atop the bones of my father and brothers, which day has not been spent walking on the edge of a blade? Assassination poison. The toxins I have endured are 100 times more potent than tonight's brew. This body has long been tempered by countless poisons, making it immune to almost all of them. Adrien, Livia, are you truly this foolish, or is there someone else backing you? We have been out of the palace for barely a month, and this is the grand gift you present to us. My brush did not stop, and I remained silent. A few years ago, I stole a rare moment of leisure and went on an incognito tour. That was when Adrien appeared. He had a handsome face, a gentle voice, and a gaze that could drown a person. Before my guards could move, he leaped out, posturing and shouting, and actually managed to scare them away. I found it amusing at the time. A man who was both entertaining and had a bit of spirit. He would be a fine diversion to keep by my side. Upon returning to the capital, a single edict made him the prince consort. At first, his little schemes for favor and attention were just games to pass the time in the dull harem. I watched him act, watched him vie for attention, like watching a caged sparrow flutter, until his so-called cousin Livia entered the palace. With Livia's arrival, the drama escalated. She coveted a white jade tea set from a previous dynasty in my treasury. The head eunuch told her she couldn't take it without my explicit order. Without a word, she slapped him across the face, calling him a dog who looked down on his betters, and declared that as the prince consort's cousin, she was half a mistress of the palace. She took the tea set by force. Adrien knelt and begged for my forgiveness, saying his cousin was young and ignorant, and that he had already scolded her harshly. He then gave the eunuch a few taels of silver to soothe his nerves. The matter was dropped. She and her maids stoned to death. Several of the prized koi I kept in the imperial garden, simply because the fish wouldn't swim over when she fed them. When the old gardener uttered a few words of protest, she had her maids push him into the water. In the dead of winter, he nearly drowned and froze to death. Adrien punished Livia with 3 days of secluded reflection. During those 3 days, his private kitchen sent her a constant stream of exquisite pastries. At last year's Mid-Autumn Festival banquet, a veteran minister of 3 reigns accidentally spilled a drop of wine on Livia's new dress. She shrieked on the spot, pointing at the old man's nose and cursing him as a good-for-nothing old fossil, blind and clumsy, and a bringer of bad luck. She forced him to apologize publicly. The entire court was stunned. Adrien helped the old minister up, saying, "Please don't mind her, my lord. My cousin has been spoiled." Then turned and quietly admonished Livia to show me some respect. The old minister, furious, claimed illness and never returned to court. Adrien then found some fault with the minister's prot-fei-fei, and had him demoted and exiled from the capital. In every incident, Adrien always appeared to be on my side, always seemed to be scolding Livia. Yet the result was that Livia grew more arrogant by the day, and Adrien's apologies became increasingly hollow. I was growing tired of it. The novelty of Adrien had worn off. This time, I was away from the palace for just a month on an inspection tour of the south. Upon my return, I received several grand gifts. Prince Consort Adrien, on the grounds that Her Majesty is overworked and needs rest, dared to have the mountain of memorials distributed to Livia to learn governance. That ignorant fool took the vermilion brush and scribbled all over an urgent military report from the border. She crossed out the names of the generals who advocated for war and replaced them with a few others, all relatives and associates of the Shen family. A white-haired old minister fell to his knees in court, his forehead striking the golden bricks with a resounding thud, tears streaming down his face. "This woman is a plague upon the nation. She shakes the very foundation of the state. We must not tolerate this." Adrien stood below the dais and just sneered, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "Her Majesty has no heir. The descendants of the Shen family are the future foundation of this nation. Watch your words, old minister, lest you bring ruin upon yourself." The court fell silent. When they saw no reprimand came from me in the south, Livia's audacity swelled. She brazenly sat upon the dragon throne. She even summoned the court painters and ordered them to create a phoenix portrait, a painting of her, dressed in the forbidden imperial yellow, seated on the throne, her gaze imperious. Copies of this portrait spread like wildfire outside the palace. Soon, the tea-houses and inns were buzzing with discussion. Rumors that a woman from the Shen family would rule the court, and that the Shen clan would dominate the empire, were rampant. Perhaps they thought my love for Adrien had driven me mad, that I would hand over this vast empire on a silver platter. But in truth, my trip to the south had been to investigate these very matters. The names I was now marking in red were all slated for immediate execution. Seeing that I was still writing, Livia's eyes blazed with fury. She strode to the imperial desk and snatched the memorial from my hands. "Playing deaf, are we?" She shook it open, her eyes scanning the red-marked names. A grin spread across her face. "So you've come to your senses. You know to promote the Shen family now." She poked a finger at the paper. "Marking them one by one is too slow. Let me." She turned to Adrien, holding out her hand. "Adrien, give me the brush. I want to be the one to promote them. I want every member of the Shen family to be grateful to me." Adrien frowned for a moment, then relaxed. He actually snatched the vermilion brush from my hand and gave it to her, his tone indulgent. "Take it! Girls like to play. A few strokes won't do any harm." His gaze turned to me, his voice laced with conflict. "Saraphina, the incense is almost gone. Are you really going to resist? Don't be stubborn. It is just adding one more person to my chambers. It is natural for a man to have multiple wives." The brush was in Livia's hand. She circled the names of all the Shen family members. Promote them all to high positions. Red ink splattered across the memorial, staining the neat script. Adrien watched her antics, his expression flickering, but only shook his head slightly. The incense was almost gone. Livia flipped open another memorial, this one listing a dozen names, all handsome and promising young men from other prominent families. She didn't even glance at them before sneering. A bunch of unsightly riffraff. They think they're worthy of being officials? The brush danced wildly, and red crosses covered the names one by one. Ink flew, dirtying the page. I glanced at it. It was a secret list from the Department of the Imperial Household, prepared for me to select new consorts. With one stroke, Livia had effectively approved them for me. Those promising young men she crossed out would be sent to the palace tomorrow. Good. I've been looking at Adrien's face for years. I've grown tired of it. Livia triumphantly tossed the two memorials to the old eunuch standing in the corner. Take these, see to it. The old eunuch looked at me. I gave an almost imperceptible nod. He took the memorials and slipped out like a shadow. Only a tiny stub of the incense remained. Adrien's eyes were full of turmoil as he stared at me, his expression both affectionate and lost. Saraphina, can't you just yield? These past few years, I haven't been happy. I truly haven't. He shook his head, a deep melancholy in his eyes. I am no one's appendage. I am a man, but before you, I always feel a head shorter, always have to bow and scrape. I don't know why, but it pains me. He paused. She serves me, cares for me with all her heart. She sees me as her sky, her earth. Only with her can I feel the dignity and fulfillment a man should have. He took a deep breath, his tone pleading. I know you love me deeply. That is why you've tolerated me until now, right? I am only asking this one thing of you, just this once. His voice dropped to a whisper. Saraphina, just say it. Ask me for the antidote. Just this once. If you ask me, say you agree to my marrying Livia. Say you need the antidote. I will give it to you immediately. I can't bear to see you suffer. He stared at me, waiting for me to cast aside my pride and beg, waiting for me to break down, to grovel for my life. Livia laughed, cutting him off. Ask her, Adrien. Have you lost your mind? Why would you ask a dying woman for anything? She turned to me, her voice dripping with malice. Today, you must die here, whether you agree or not. Adrien frowned. What are you talking about, Livia? We agreed we were just going to pressure her, to scare her into letting you in. I never wanted her dead. Livia turned towards the hall, a sly smile on her face. I lied, Adrien. There is no antidote. That severance brew is a fatal poison. One touch of the lips and it enters the organs. Not even the gods can save you. Saraphina, your time is up. As she spoke, she clapped her hands 3 times, her face alight with glee. The heavy doors of the hall swung open silently. A tall, imposing figure walked in, followed by a squad of guards in cold iron armor. I narrowed my eyes. The main act of tonight's play had arrived. I just hadn't expected it to be my adopted son, Gideon, an orphan, who had crawled out of the sea of corpses on the northern battlefield. I had pulled him from a pile of the dead with my own hands, wiped the blood from his face, given him a name, a military tally, and bestowed upon him unparalleled honor and authority. Now, his face was expressionless. He didn't even glance at me on the throne as he walked straight to Adrien. Then, he took out a brilliant yellow robe embroidered with a ferocious 5-clawed golden dragon. Gideon shook out the dragon robe and gently draped it over Adrien's shoulders. Father, the night is cold. Your son has brought you another layer of clothing. Please take care of your dragon body. Adrien was stunned, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. His hand clenched the robe, but he whispered, Gideon, what are you all trying to do? I don't want to be emperor. I never did. I just wanted to marry Livia and for Saraphina to apologize. You don't want to. Gideon finally lifted his eyes, sweeping a cold glance over him before smiling. No matter. You are the prince consort, the legitimate successor. Once she is dead, He gestured with his chin in my direction. You will ascend the throne as is proper. Sit on that chair for a few days. Enjoy the thrill. And then, he paused, his voice finally revealing the cold ruthlessness of a man in control. Issue an edict, abdicating to me. You will return to your harem, and continue to be a wealthy idler. Adrien froze, turning to look at Gideon. But Gideon had already pulled Livia into his embrace. The gesture was intimate, familiar, clearly not a recent development. Livia nestled against him, a coquettish smile on her face, her eyes filled with adoration and affection for Gideon. Livia is still the cleverest, Gideon said, looking down at the woman in his arms. To get rid of this troublesome old woman without shedding a drop of blood. Adrien looked as if he had been struck by lightning. His eyes nearly bulged from their sockets. He stared at the pair, his finger trembling as he pointed at them. When did you two? What is your relationship? Livia leaned against Gideon and sneered at Adrien. Adrien, you really are slow, aren't you? If it weren't for Gideon's secret planning, helping you catch Saraphina's eye in the south, suppressing all those impeachments against you, do you think you would have had the chance to poison her in this very study? Adrien was completely dumbfounded. After a long silence, he pointed a weak finger at himself, his voice a whisper. So, from the very beginning, I was just a puppet in your hands. A joke? No one answered him. All eyes were on the incense burner, on me seated on the dragon throne. The last wisp of smoke from the incense vanished, leaving only cold ash. Livia sneered. In a few moments, her guts will rot. A fate worse than death. 3, 2, 1, time's up. Gideon's arm tightened around Livia. He said nothing, but his eyes were locked on my face. Adrien was still breathing heavily. The faint sound of hurried footsteps seemed to be approaching from outside the hall. I finally looked up, resting my cheek on my hand and lazily regarded them. In the dead silence after the incense had burned out, Livia's shriek pierced the air like a poisoned needle. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. The time must not be up yet. Wait. She'll be in pain soon. Any moment now. She stared at my face, searching for any trace of agony, a single drop of sweat, the slightest tremor. But all she saw was a frozen, bottomless pool. Gideon's arm constricted sharply, forcing a cry of pain from Livia. The icy mask on his face shattered, and for the first time, his deep eyes clearly reflected something called fear. He whipped his head around, his gaze like a hawk's on Livia, his voice squeezed from between his teeth with a tremor. He didn't even notice. Poison. Are you sure? She really drank it? Every last drop! He didn't even dare to ask me directly. Livia, pale from his grip, nodded frantically, her voice tearful. She did. Adrien fed it to her himself. I watched. Not a drop was left. Gideon, she must be faking. She is just holding on. Soon, her words were cut off by Gideon's dark glare. Adrien seemed to have been completely stunned by the repeated shocks. He turned his head stiffly, looking from the crazed Livia to the ashen-faced Gideon. And finally, his gaze timidly shifted to me. When his eyes met my calm, unwavering ones, he flinched as if burned and instinctively clutched the garish dragon robe on his shoulders, his knuckles white. He did not dare to look at me. I moved slightly, just a small adjustment of my posture. The soft scrape of my boots on the golden bricks sounded like thunder in the silence. Gideon's body went rigid, like a beast sensing a mortal threat. He held Livia tightly, his eyes locked on me, full of vigilance, and an almost instinctual dread. Gideon! My voice finally broke the silence. It was not loud, almost flat, but it cut through the air like a cold razor. Gideon flinched. That name, once a symbol of immense trust and favor, now sounded like a cold shackle. My gaze fell on his face. How many years have you been by my side? Gideon's throat worked, but he said nothing, pinned in place by my stare. Since the northern battlefield, from that pile of dead men, when I pulled you out, I continued, as if recounting an old, impersonal story. How old were you? 13, 14, thin as a twig, covered in blood, with the eyes of a starving wolf. My tone was devoid of emotion. I gave you a name, food, clothing. I taught you to read and ride, taught you to kill. I gave you military power, honor, and wealth. In this imperial city besides us, who would dare to show you disrespect? I tilted my head slightly as if confused. In what way? Have we wronged you? Ha! A dry, cold laugh escaped Gideon's throat. My words seemed to have provoked him, his fear momentarily suppressed by the shame and fury of having his ambition exposed. Wronged me? He repeated, his voice laced with indignation. Saraphina, spare me your hypocritical sentimentality. You were good to me. You only saw me as a sharper, more useful blade in your hand, a vicious dog to bite your enemies for you. He took a sharp step forward as if to intimidate me, but instinctively stopped at a safe distance. Livia, trapped in his grip, gasped for air but dared not make a sound. The Empire. Gideon's voice was distorted with a feverish excitement, as if trying to convince himself. How can this vast empire be held in the hands of a woman forever? A hen crowing at dawn. The world turned upside down. There is no precedent for a woman to rule securely. You cannot hold it. You will only bring it to ruin. Look at what you have done all these years, dallying with consorts, acting with absolute authority. You've turned the court into a cesspool. Ask any official in this court, who among them truly submits to you in their heart. He grew more agitated, waving his arm towards the hall's entrance as if summoning a great army. A man, only a man can truly control this world. To kill decisively, to expand the borders. That is what makes an emperor. You, a woman, fickle and indecisive. What do you know of ruling an empire? He took a deep breath, the madness in his face intensifying, almost eclipsing his fear. I am your adopted son. I know the true way of an emperor better than you. I am more qualified to sit on that throne than you are. The thousands of elite guards outside are all my men, my trusted followers trained by my own hand. He drew his sword, the cold steel glinting in the candlelight. The tip pointed straight at me, but his arm trembled slightly. Tonite! Even if that poison did not kill you, you must die here, this throne. It is time for a change. The glint of the blade stung Livia's eyes. She screamed and buried her face in Gideon's chest. Adrien's legs gave way, and he nearly collapsed, the yellow dragon robe slipping half off his shoulders. I looked at the sword pointed at me, at Gideon's heaving chest, at the feigned ferocity in his eyes. The corner of my mouth lifted almost imperceptibly. It was not a smile. It was the cold appraisal of a predator before the kill. Gideon. My voice remained flat. You have been by our side. You have seen how we treat our enemies. It was not a question, but a statement. Gideon's hand tightened on his sword, his knuckles cracking. A vein pulsed in his temple. Do you remember the prime minister from the last dynasty? The one named Li? I began slowly, as if telling a distant story. A veteran of 3 reigns, his prot-fey face scattered throughout the empire. He thought his foundation was deep, and he conspired with a few old officials to force me to return power to a young boy from the imperial clan. My gaze rested on Gideon's rapidly dilating pupils. We summoned him to the imperial study. You were standing guard then. We poured him a cup of tea, praised him for his hard work. He drank it, and then... What? Gideon's face turned deathly pale. That powerful old minister, within moments of drinking the tea, right there in the throne room, in front of him and the entire court, his skin began to fester and ooze pus. The excruciating pain made the white-haired old man howl, inhumanly writhing on the floor, tearing at his own flesh until he was a bloody mess. He screamed for a full day and night before he died. Afterwards, his entire clan, 700 people, men, women, and children, were all buried alive. The stench of blood hung over the imperial city for 3 days. And that beauty from the western regions, just a palace maid. My voice continued. A cold poison. I forget her name, only that her eyes were like glass beads. A pity she grew too ambitious, tried to play the part of a past empress, and tampered with my calming incense. I watched the cold sweat bead on Gideon's forehead. His sword hand was shaking uncontrollably. You personally led the search and found the evidence. Do you remember how we dealt with her? A choked sound escaped Gideon's throat. The woman was stripped naked and tied to a bronze pillar in front of the palace gate. Not a simple whipping or beheading. I ordered the most skilled artisan, with the thinnest, sharpest blade, to flay her alive, inch by inch. Starting from her scalp, her desperate, piercing screams echoed over the imperial city for 3 days. The flayed skin was tanned and hung from the very box that had held the poisoned incense as a warning, displayed at the palace gate for a full month until it weathered away to nothing. And then there was. I paused, my eyes sweeping over his pale face. You're my dear uncle. Number. Say no more, Gideon roared, his pupils dilating to their limit with terror. He shoved Livia away and raised his sword, a murderous aura filling the air. But in the next instant, the whistle of the blade tearing through the air stopped abruptly. Gideon's eyes were fixed on the tip of a sword protruding from his own chest. His motion was frozen, his downward swing forcibly halted by a cold, unyielding force. He looked down in disbelief at the weapon that had pierced his robes. A broken gasp escaped his throat. He twisted his neck with a sickening crack, his gaze falling on the man behind him. The captain of his personal guard, the man who had followed him into the hall, now held the hilt of the sword, his face a blank mask, his eyes as empty as a dry well. Why? The word bubbled out of Gideon's lips with a spray of blood. Shink. The answer was another blade, thrust mercilessly into his side from behind. Another of his trusted guards, his face equally devoid of emotion, his movements precise and cold. Agony exploded through Gideon's body. He could no longer hold his sword. It clattered to the floor with a deafening crash. His tall frame swayed, and he crumpled forward like a collapsing tower. Blood quickly pooled beneath him. He lay on the cold ground, twitching, each breath pulling at the blades impaling him, bringing fresh waves of despair. He forced his eyes open, his vision blurring, but he could just make out the unmoving figure on the throne. I leaned forward slightly. But you are also a fool. If I were you, I would not have revealed myself so soon. I would have waited until I saw me collapse from the poison, bleeding from every orifice, my guts spilling out completely dead before rushing in with my men, full of grief to save the day. My gaze swept over his wide, pained eyes. You are still so impatient. You haven't changed at all. A sound like a broken bellows, half laugh, half sob, rattled in Gideon's throat. He vomited a great mouthful of blood. With his last ounce of strength, he clawed at the floor, his fingernails breaking, and lifted his head, his eyes burning with a bone-deep hatred. Saraphina, you will die a dog's death. Your empire is doomed. To have no heir. No one to send you to your grave. He roared out his final venomous curse, and with a last violent spasm, his head fell to the side, and he was still. The hall was deathly silent, save for the thick, nauseating smell of blood. The two guards stepped back like puppets whose task was complete, and stood at attention, their cold eyes once again fixed on me with absolute obedience. Livia's scream was trapped in her throat, reduced to a terrified gasp. She looked from Gideon's body to the two expressionless traitors. And then her eyes fell on me, as if seeing me for the first time. She began to tremble violently, her teeth chattering, backing away until she hit a cold pillar. Adrien's body shuddered, barely holding himself up. Outside, the footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the clash of armor and the sound of short, sharp cries, Gideon's men being swiftly eliminated. The heavy doors swung open again. The old eunuch stood there, and behind him, 2 rows of armored imperial guards, their blades drawn, their presence radiating a chilling, killing intent. The crisis had been silently resolved. Livia's eyes were fixed on my face. Why? Why aren't you dead? The severance brew, it is instant death. I watched you drink it. Every drop. Why are you still alive? I slowly leaned back in my chair, my gaze meeting her crazed, uncomprehending eyes. The severance brew? I repeated softly. Livia, you are too young. Or rather, Gideon was too young. He has no idea what I have been through. My gaze swept over her, over the collapsed form of Adrien, over Gideon's corpse. From the day I stepped over the blood of my father and brothers to sit on this throne, there have been few things in this world that can poison me. The night before my coronation, my dear uncle placed the 1,000-fold toxin in my incense burner. Odorless, colorless, a single breath could kill 10 oxen instantly. I smelled it all night. The next morning, I cut off his head with my own hands. In the 3rd year of my reign, the southern territories rebelled. They bribed the imperial kitchen to put bone melt powder in my favorite soup. A single drop could dissolve gold. I finished the bowl later. The heads of the 13 southern chieftains were made into wine cups. They are still in my private collection. Last autumn, a tribute horse from the steppe tribes had its saddle soaked in celestial ruin. The slightest touch to the skin would cause it to rot to the bone, followed by 7 days of agony before death. I rode that horse for 3 days. That tribe, and all who were allied with it, have been erased from the steppes. Their grasslands are now pastures for my army. I looked at Livia. Her face was as white as paper. This body has been tempered by countless poisons. To say it is immune might be an exaggeration, I said, a cold, humorless smile touching my lips. But a concoction like the severance brew, to me, is no different from a bowl of water. I tapped the desk. I climbed my way up through mountains of corpses and endless conspiracies. After reaching the summit, I find these little harem squabbles and courtly backstabbings of yours to be uninteresting. I paused. Exceedingly dull. My gaze finally settled on Livia's terrified, contorted face. Livia, you and I had no quarrel. In fact, when you first entered the palace, for Adrien's sake, I was not unkind to you. Tell me, why were you so determined to harm me? No quarrel, Livia shrieked. Her fear ignited into a blaze of jealous fury. No quarrel, ha ha ha, Saraphina. What do you know? You sit up there, enjoying the worship of millions, holding the power of life and death. How could you possibly understand? She pointed a trembling finger at the throne, her eyes filled with a sick obsession. Before I came to the palace, I thought a woman's best fate was to marry a rich man and live in his shadow. But inside these walls, I learned that a woman can live like this. So glorious, so noble, to decide a person's fate with a single word. Her voice was raw with a desperate madness. Why? Why is it only you who can sit on that throne? Why is it only you who can control this empire? Men can have countless wives, but women must be subservient to men. Just because you are the daughter of an emperor, she pointed at Adrien, then at Gideon's corpse, her face a mask of contempt. Look at them, Adrien. A useless romantic, who does nothing but pity himself, Gideon. A reckless brute who thinks he controls everything. What are they? Are they worthy of standing beside you? Are they worthy of coveting that throne? Her eyes grew wild and fanatical. I want your position. I want this empire. I want the world to kneel at my feet, men. Ha! Men are fools, stepping stones, pawns to be used. Adrien is a pawn, so is Gideon. She smiled with an almost childlike cruelty. When they are all dead, when I am secure on that throne, I will be the sole ruler of this world. No one will ever be above me. No one will ever dare to say no to me. Then, I will have won. Ha 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 ha. Livia, you... Adrien was completely frozen, staring at the woman he had once cherished as if she were a monster. Livia's laughter subsided. She panted, her face flushed with madness, and looked at me defiantly. I sneered and waved a hand. Take this Livia and send her to the border army. The 700,000 soldiers there haven't been home in years. You are so beautiful, you will surely be very popular. Livia's laughter choked in her throat. The madness on her face froze, replaced by a primal terror. 700,000 men, not men, but 700,000 beasts, caged for too long, who would go mad at the sight of blood. She screamed and tried to lunge at me but was seized by the imperial guards. Adrien stumbled forward. Your Majesty, have mercy! he cried, his eyes darting around. Please spare her. We were wrong. We will leave the palace and never return. I will go back to my family's ancestral hall and spend the rest of my life chanting sutras to atone for my sins. Please, for the sake of our past affections, spare Livia's life. She is young and foolish. The once elegant prince consort was now groveling in the dust. I looked at him, a faint, cold smile on my lips. Your family. His pleading stopped. He looked up at me, bewildered. I summoned the old eunuch, who presented the memorial Livia had marked, the one filled with the names of the Shen clan. Now, beside each red circle was a single, sharp character written in vermilion, execute. And beside that, a single line, the Shen clan of the south, for treason, regicide, and conspiracy, is unpardonable. Annihilate the entire clan. Effective immediately. Adrien's eyes were fixed on the word, annihilate. This can't be. She was just playing. Livia marked them for you, one stroke, and your entire clan is wiped out. Adrien, for years your family has used your position to seize land, raise a private army, and collude with foreign powers. Any one of these crimes is enough to warrant the execution of your entire clan. We simply couldn't be bothered to act. Now, thanks to her, the matter is settled. The other one, he stammered. The other memorial? The one she crossed out. He meant the list of new consorts. The eunuch presented the second memorial. Beside each red cross was another cold note. These 13 men are handsome and talented. Select them for the palace to serve in our chambers. Adrien stared. Number impossible. He shook his head, his lips trembling. You said you only loved me. You said I was special. You said you would never look at another man, Saraphina. You said it. Adrien. My voice was not loud, but it shattered his last delusion. You think too much in all these years? When have we ever been moved by sentiment? I leaned forward. You were merely a plaything. My finger pointed at him, then towards the depths of the palace. You and the dozen or so in the purification chamber. Your predecessors. We allowed you a few more days of freedom because your service was satisfactory. Adrien's eyes widened in horror. The purification chamber, the castrated consorts. He had always thought they were punished for some mistake, or simply dismissed. He never imagined. Now, it is time for you to join them, I said, leaning back. One cut, and things will be cleaner. If we ever think of you in the future, we may even visit. No. Adrien finally broke. Adrien, I said, my voice echoing in the hall. You said you wanted to marry Livia? Was that truly from the heart? You wore that dragon robe? Did you truly want to take it off, or did you want to sit more firmly in it? You claim to be Gideon's puppet. But what of the poisoned dagger in your sleeve? Was that for him, or for us? Adrien's face turned ashen. He clutched his sleeve, trying to hide the evidence. Us? I answered for him, my gaze flicking to Gideon's corpse. Or him? He collapsed completely. Ha! A soft, cold laugh escaped my lips. To the victor go the spoils. Explanations are superfluous. I looked down at the pathetic man. Fool, you, her, and the one on the floor. I gestured to Livia and Gideon. All hopelessly foolish. One with ambition greater than the heavens and ability thinner than paper. One a brute who thought he controlled everything, but couldn't even tell friend from foe. As for you, my gaze fell on Adrien with utter weariness. Your mind is the filthiest of all, claiming to love her, yet all you plotted was to use her family's power, Gideon's blade, and my corpse to seize the empire. You say we should be a wife and mother. Ha! Why can't a woman be emperor? Because of wastes like you, who only know how to scheme and poison and fight for favor. We climbed to this throne over the bones of my father and brothers, with real blades, flawless strategy, and more blood on our hands than you have ever drunk water. This body has endured more poison than you have ever seen medicine. What right have you to speak to us of propriety, of status? Our empire is secure. We have no need for clowns like you to worry about succession. The imperial clan has plenty of candidates. When we are in the mood, We will simply pick one and grant him the title of Prince Bloodline. As long as we sit here, we are the bloodline. The hall was silent, but for Livia's choked sobs and Adrien's harsh breathing. Drag them away, I said. My voice final. 2 guards seized Adrien. The dragon robe, stained with his and Gideon's blood, fell to the floor. No, your majesty, Saraphina. Spare me, he shrieked. I didn't even look up. Send him to the purification chamber. Tell the old hand to be careful. Make it clean. Don't kill him. The old eunuch bowed. As you command. Adrien's wails turned to screams of pure terror as he was dragged from the hall. Another guard hauled up the limp form of Livia. The border army 700,000, I added. Her body went rigid, and she began to howl with a terror even greater than Adrien's. She was gagged and dragged out like a dead dog. The hall was finally quiet. The stench of blood remained. I picked up my vermilion brush again. The mountain of memorials awaited. The southern floods, the northern army's provisions, the punishment of corrupt officials. In this vast empire, countless matters awaited the final judgment of the imperial seal. Gideon, Adrien, Livia? They were nothing but dust. My brush moved, the red ink tracing its path across the paper with a soft scratching sound. The days of our reign are long.